started here in the United Kingdom by the Wildlife Trusts, and it encourages people at least once a day to get out and do what they're calling random acts of wildness. Get out and do something to engage with the natural world around you. What I thought we'd do today is have a look at some of the moths that have come to the moth trap here in my garden and see what there is to see. So I'm just going to turn around. You can see the moth trap glowing behind me. I'll turn the camera around for a moment. And we will make notes as we go. First thing to do is to check the temperature. It's 16.5 degrees, which is as low as it's got overnight. So it's a pretty decently warm night. So I'll quickly make a note of that. And we'll have a quick look for some moths outside the trap before we start. So I've got here is a waved umber. This is quite a well camouflaged moth, designed to look, well, not designed, but evolved to look like some bark or some wood. So it's hard for things to see. Hard for things to see it and eat it. There's a waved umber, fairly common species, one of the Geometridae moths. And then on here outside, there's a garden carpet moth. A couple of them. And another moth on the outside. Come on. There we go. There's a knot grass. So I'll make a quick note of those. It's important to keep records of what you've seen. And these all go into the National Moth Recording Scheme here in the United Kingdom. I tend to submit the records once a year towards the end of the year rather than doing it each time, but I make a note. So that seemed to be what was on the outside at a first glance. I'm going to turn the light off now. Oh. It's more difficult to do one-handed than you might think. Now, on the outside of the trap, there are lots of these caddisflies, or the trichoptera. I don't particularly do caddisflies, but I will take one or two examples to try and work out what they are later. Another caddisfly, you see, next to the cable. There were lots of these flying around the trap last night. Probably far more than there will be any moths, but we'll have a go. And I'll take the perspex sheets off and open up, and we'll go and have a look inside and see what there is to see. So here's a light brown apple moth. Another species we get that's pretty common these days. Tend to get large numbers of this. So I'll make a note of that. And then what else have we got in here? Well, there's more than there was last time I did one of these broadcasts, which is a good thing. Still been a relatively poor year, I'll be honest. Okay. Inside there, slightly odd angle, is an angle shades moth. Looks a bit like dried up brown leaves, so it's camouflaged and disguised. And then on here there's a smaller moth. You might be able to see on the egg box there, which I will put into a pot. So some of these I don't immediately recognise. Don't know what they are when I'm just out here doing this, so I'm going to put them into a small pot or pillbox and be able to work them out a bit later on with any luck. Or if I can't work them out, I can retain the specimen and pass it to somebody who's better than me, and they can tell me what I'm looking at. More caddisflies. And down in there, there's a heart and dart. Let's see if I can get that out. Heart and dart moth. Again, a very, very common species. Noctuidae this time. But it's got this dark stripe over the top of the head, which is one of the features this moth has. And obviously the pattern of markings on the wings is fairly distinctive. So I'll write down those few whilst I remember. So we had Nangle shades. We had a heart and dart. Oops. Lots more of these caddisflies. If I were a caddisfly person, I would be ecstatic with how many we've got, I'm sure. But they're not really a group I'm particularly good at doing, so I'm not massively expecting to make a lot of progress identifying them, but I will take a few examples of some of the slightly different looking ones. And I'll have a go at them later on today. Just in case, because you never know when you're going to find something interesting by doing this. So there we are with the caddisflies. Keep going through, see what else is in the trap. There is a small geometrid, a small dusty wave, this one's called. Again, another common species, we get these fairly often, but small dusty wave. Another heart and dart inside there, and a treble lines, so called because it's got 3 lines on it. 1, 2, 3, we can see them. Excellent. So treble lines, heart and dart, small dusty wave. Quickly write those down. Get to see just how bad my handwriting is. But as long as I can read it, that's all that matters. All of the data, all of the records will be put into an electronic system and sent on from there to the National Recording Scheme. So this is called a pale mottled willow. Distinguishing features here really are the 3 dark dots, 4 dark dots along the leading edge of the wing, combined with the general pattern of the wing. It also will have a very pale hind wing if I were to provoke it and make it fly. So pale mottled willow, common enough species again. Oh, another treble lines. Slightly more of them than normal. And on this side, this white spotted one is a white ermine. Ermine, people might know, is a type of fur which is white with black spots, and I guess the thinking was that these moths look a bit like that fur. So white ermine and treble lines, and a codling moth on here. A species that's associated with apple trees, and codling is an old word for apple. So, willow, white ermine, treble lines, codling moth. Again, write these down. Pale mottled willow. One or two of them I have just shorthands for. Treble lines. What have you got one of them down? Codling moth and white ermine. So a few more moths there. There's still one or two more in here. Oh, and there's a heart and dart. I forgot to. An extra heart and dart. And another heart and dart there. There's another heart and dart, and there was one before. Oh, a few moths in the bottom of the trap, which we'll look at a bit later when I finish going through. So here we go again. Working through another trap. More of the caddisflies, which I'm not particularly going to attempt to do. Couple of heart and darts, and the small one, I think, is a hawthorn moth, and one of the marbled miners, I believe. These are a group where they can't be reliably identified from external features and requires examination of the genitalia to get to species level. So I will pop that one in a pot. Have a go at later. Being a bit awkward, so I'm going to have to put this down whilst I do that. Turn the camera around and you can watch me try to pot them off, which is always a laugh. So what I'm going to try and do is get this moth out of here into this pot. A bit of banging sometimes helps. There we go. So that's now in the pot, and I'll be able to work out later on what it is properly. That is another marbled miner type. Again, would require genitalia examining. I don't have all of the ones in this group done. I tend to take a small sample every year just to get them confirmed that both species are still present. So we'll make a note of those. Alright, keeping going. More egg boxes to work through. This rather oddly shaped and attractive one is a lime speck pug. Somewhat associated, I think, with the lime trees, hence the name. But the pugs are a group of moths. They're in the Geometridae, and a lot of them are quite small, quite similar, quite hard to identify, but this one is pretty distinctive. And this one is a micro moth, Tortrichidae, Hedia pruniana, or the plum tortrix. And another garden carpet. Let me just quickly make a note of them. Come on, what else did we have? Lime speck pug, that was it. And still more to go through. So this rather grey looking moth is called a willow beauty, and the pattern of cross lines on the wing, particularly those two converging lines, are what tell you that's what species that is. That was all that was on there, was willow beauty. One more egg box to do, then we'll quickly go through what's inside. So we've got here a flame shoulder moth, a pretty common species again. Nothing we've seen today has been unusual or rare in any way. These are all common species that be flying around lots of gardens and areas down here in southern England. And a rather hard to see shuttle shaped dart. So I'll just quickly make a note of them. Capture all the data to submit to the moth recording scheme. What's on the inside? So it all comes apart in flat packs. Oops. Yep, more caddis flies. Right. This is one of the greener species, I think. Need a little bit of staring at to work out what they are, so I will put it in a pot to do later. And then on here we've got a spectacle moth. I'll see if it'll behave itself and we'll see why it's called a spectacle. And the reason it's called a spectacle moth is if you look at the front of its face, it looks a bit like it's got a pair of aviator's goggles, so it would. This one seems slightly damaged on its right, to the left of my screen, so it's only really got the one goggle on the one side. And fighting the autofocus a little bit here. There we go. A spectacle. Write that down. Another hardened dart, another codling moth, another pale mottled willow. That would largely be that. Quickly make a note of those last few. And we'll have a quick wander around to check the other side, just in case, because there's always something hiding on the back. What we've got here is a light emerald moth. Nice green colour, of course. Hence the name emerald. Quickly wander up here and see what they are. Another waved umber. And another willow beauty. So a few more, which is always good. So there we go, that was today's moth trap. All the egg boxes need to go through. What I'll do now is I'll go and let the moths go somewhere into a bush or somewhere where they'll be safe from the birds. Whilst I do, I'll just check I've not missed anything as I go through. Let everything go, apart from the one or two I need to hang on to identify what they are for later. And then keep my notes, put them into a database and get that sent off. So what we'll do, we'll end, at least for the Twitter broadcast, the picture you end on is the image it shows. We'll end on this rather nice wave dumber. Always rather fond of this species. It's a nice example of camouflage. So we'll end on this wave dumber.